Hey guys, welcome back to r/Prorevenge. In this Reddit HOA story, an HOA sued me for living in an off-grid lake cabin and not paying HOA dues. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. So a few years back I was living in a cramped apartment in the city, working a decent job in IT, but I was getting burnt out. I've always been the type who enjoys solitude and nature, and I've been dreaming about finding some property where I could eventually build a small off-grid setup and escape the noise. I was not planning on moving permanently right away, just wanted somewhere I could go on weekends, maybe work remote from occasionally, and eventually transition to full-time once I had everything set up. I spent months searching online listings, driving out to look at rural properties, checking out foreclosures and auctions. Most places were either way out of my budget or complete teardowns in the middle of nowhere with no lake or water access. But then one day I stumbled across this listing for an old lake cabin. The photos were terrible, clearly taken years ago, and the description was vague. It said the property had been abandoned for over a decade, the cabin was in rough shape, but it sat on about 3 acres with direct frontage on a decent-sized private lake. The price seemed too good to be true, which immediately made me suspicious, but I contacted the listing agent anyway. It turns out the property had been a state limbo for years after the original owner passed away with no clear heirs. The county had finally taken possession for unpaid taxes and was selling it as is. The agent warned me the cabin was basically uninhabitable and would need major work, but the land itself was solid and the lake was beautiful. I drove out to see it on a Saturday morning. The property was at the end of a long gravel road tucked away in the woods. When I pulled up, I could see why it had been abandoned. The cabin was a disaster, roof half caved in, windows broken, porch rotting away, but when I walked around back and saw the lake, I was sold. It was gorgeous. Maybe 40 acres of clean water surrounded by trees and completely peaceful. The property had about 200 feet of direct lakefront. What really caught my attention though was that I didn't see any other houses on the lake. I walked the perimeter of my potential property and could see one development off to the east and maybe a quarter-mile away through the woods. It looked like a newer subdivision, probably built in the last 15 years with cookie-cutter houses all lined up, but they were not on the lake, they were set back from the shore. I didn't think much of it at the time. I made an offer that same week, well below asking, since the cabin was essentially worthless and I would essentially be buying land only. It was literally abandoned, and the county accepted immediately. I went through all the title work, did a survey, made sure everything was legally clean, and the property had never been part of any HOA, never had any easements or deed restrictions. It was just a standalone parcel that happened to be near a subdivision. It was perfect. I closed on the property about 2 months later and started making some plans. The cabin was too far gone to save, so I had it demolished and hauled away. My plan was to eventually build a small modern cabin, solar panels, well water, septic system, the whole off-grid setup. But that would take time and money, so for the first few months I just cleared the lot, had the land graded, and put in a gravel pad where I could park my truck and set up a large camping trailer that I bought used. The trailer was not fancy, but it was enough for a weekend stay. I ran a generator for power, brought in water jugs, used a camping toilet setup. It was rustic, but that's exactly what I wanted. I started spending every weekend out there, and some weeks I would work remotely from the property if the weather was nice. Life was good, and that is when the HOA decided to make themselves known. About 3 months after I closed on the property, I was out there on a Saturday afternoon sitting by the lake with a beer, enjoying the silence, when I heard someone shouting. I turned around and saw this woman marching down from the road towards my trailer. She was dressed like she was about to play tennis at a country club, and she had this pinched expression like she smelled something bad. She didn't even introduce herself, she just launched right in. "Excuse me, you cannot be here. This is private property." I stood up confused. "Yeah, it is. It's my property." She looked taken aback for a second and then recovered. "No, this entire area is part of the HOA. You need to leave immediately or I'm calling the sheriff." I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. "Ma'am, I own this property. I bought it a few months ago. I have the deed and everything. This has never been part of any HOA." Her face went red. "That's impossible. All property around the lake is part of our association. We have rules and regulations. You cannot just camp here like some homeless person. This affects all of our property values." I was starting to get annoyed by her and said, "Look, I don't know what to tell you, but this is my land and I'm not part of your HOA and never have been. I've got all the paperwork to prove it." "Now, if you don't mind, you're trespassing on my property." She actually sputtered at that. "Trespassing? How dare you?" "I'm the HOA president and we're going to be having a conversation about this. You will be hearing from us." She turned around and stomped back towards the road. I shook my head and went back to my beer, figuring that was the end of it. Some busybody HOA president who didn't understand property boundaries, whatever. I was wrong though, that was just the beginning. The next weekend when I came back, there was a certified letter waiting for me. It was from the HOA addressed to current occupant at my lake property address. The letter informed me that I was in violation of multiple HOA regulations, including unauthorized structure, my trailer, failure to maintain approved landscaping, failure to register with the HOA, and failure to pay HOA dues. It demanded I remove the trailer immediately, register with the HOA, and pay 6 months of back dues plus late fees totaling almost $3,000. I called my real estate attorney, the same one who handled my closing. I explained the situation and forwarded him the letter. He reviewed all my title documents and called me back the next day. "You're completely in the clear," he said. "Your property was never part of the HOA. It predates the subdivision by decades. They have no claim to your land whatsoever. Don't respond to their letter. If they contact you again, refer them to me." So that is what I did. I sent a brief letter back to the HOA, CC'd my attorney stating that my property was not part of the association, never had been, and that I would not be complying with any of their demands. I thought that would be the end of it, but the harassment started about 2 weeks later. I came out to the property one Friday evening and found a notice stapled to a tree near my trailer. It was a violation notice claiming that I was in breach of HOA landscaping standards and had 15 days to comply or face fines. I tore it down and threw it away. The next morning I woke up to someone pounding on my trailer door at 7 AM. It was a different person this time, a guy in his 50s wearing cargo shorts and a polo shirt. He introduced himself as the HOA vice president. "We need to talk about your situation here," he said. "There is no situation," I replied. "I am not part of your HOA. My attorney already sent you a letter explaining this." "Look, buddy," he said, his tone shifting to something more aggressive. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is not gonna fly. We've got over 60 homes in the HOA and we all pay our dues. We all follow the rules. And you cannot just squat here and do whatever you want." "I'm not squatting, I own this property and it's not part of your HOA. That's not what our records show. According to our documentation, all property bordering the lake is part of the association. That includes your parcel." I was getting tired of this. "Then your records are just wrong. Check with the county, check the title history. This land was never part of your development." He got right in my face at that point. "Listen to me very carefully. We have rules for a reason. This neighborhood has standards. We are not going to let some hillbilly trash come here and turn the lake into a dump. You either join the HOA, pay your dues and follow our rules, or we will make your life hell until you leave." I stepped back. "Get off my property. Now." He smirked. "Or what, you gonna call the cops? Go ahead. We donate to the sheriff's election campaign every year. Good luck with that." He walked away and I immediately called my attorney again. I bought a couple of trail cameras and set them up around the property, facing the road in the direction of the subdivision. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction, every letter, every notice. Good thing I did, because it got worse. Over the next few months, the HOA escalated the harassment. I would find violation notices stapled to trees almost weekly. They sent me letters demanding I attend HOA meetings to discuss my compliance issues. They even claimed that I owed them thousands in dues and late fees, and one letter even demanded that I grant them an easement to my lakefront so HOA residents could access the water, claiming it was just for the community good. That last one really showed their hand. See, I'd done some research and found out that when Lakeside Estates was developed, they'd planned to include lake access as an amenity, but they never actually secured rights to the lake. The developer had apparently assumed they could buy up the remaining lakefront properties later, including mine, but then went bankrupt before that happened, so these HOA people had bought houses in a lakefront community, but didn't actually have lake access. They could see the water from their backyards, but couldn't get to it, because my property and a few others blocked them. They wanted my land, plain and simple. And they thought they could bully me into giving it up. I refused every demand, every request, every letter, and I CC'd my attorney on every response, and the harassment just continued. They called code enforcement on me, claiming I was running an illegal campground. The inspector came out, looked around and told me everything was fine as long as I was not renting the property or operating a business. They called the health department claiming I had an illegal septic system. The inspector came out, confirmed I was using a legal camping sanitation setup, and they even called the sheriff, claiming I was suspicious and possibly dangerous. The deputy who responded was actually pretty cool about it and told me to call if the HOA kept bothering me, but the worst part was when they started coming onto my property without permission. I would review the trail camera footage and see HOA board members walking around taking pictures, measuring things, and one time I even caught 3 of them on camera actually prying open my trailer door and looking inside. That's when I called the sheriff myself and filed a trespassing complaint against them. The deputy who came out was different from the first one, and he definitely seemed friendlier with the HOA president when she showed up. He basically told me it was a civil matter and suggested we just work it out like neighbors. I pointed out that they had broken into my trailer and that was clearly criminal trespassing and breaking and entering, but he said without proof of damage or theft he was not gonna arrest anyone and I should consider being more cooperative with the community. I filed a formal complaint with the sheriff's office after that, but nothing came of it. This went on for almost 2 years. Constant letters, constant violation notices, constant threats, and they fined me for over $50,000 for various fake violations, though obviously I never paid a cent since I was not part of the HOA. They filed liens against my property with the county, which my attorney had to fight to get removed, costing me legal fees. They even showed up at my property unannounced dozens of times, and they posted on local social media groups claiming I was a dangerous squatter. They contacted my employer trying to get me fired, claiming I was running some kind of illegal operation. Through all of this, I kept documenting everything, every letter, every email, every interaction, and every trespassing incident caught on camera, and every false report to authorities. My attorney kept telling me that we had a strong case for harassment, but he wanted to wait and see if they would back off. But they didn't back off. They doubled down. About 2.5 years after I bought the property, I got served with a lawsuit. The HOA was suing me for over $100,000. The complaint was thick, full of legal jargon, but the basics were there. They claimed I devalued their neighborhood by not maintaining my property to their standards, and that I owed years of unpaid HOA dues, that my refusal to join the HOA was somehow a violation of local ordinances, and that I needed to grant them lake access as a public accommodation. It was completely insane, but it was also real and I had to respond. I met with my attorney and we started building our defense, but he also suggested something else, a countersuit. We could go after them for harassment, trespassing, defamation, abuse of process, and a bunch of other things. The evidence I'd collected over 2 years would be devastating. He estimated that we could probably get a settlement pretty quickly once they saw what we had, but I didn't want a settlement. I wanted to bury them. We filed our response denying all their claims and we filed a massive countersuit. We included copies of my title documents proving the property was never part of the HOA, and we included the survey showing the property boundaries. We also included every single piece of harassment evidence they ever sent. Things like letters, emails, photos, and videos even from the trail cameras that were showing them trespassing, records of false reports to authorities, screenshots of their social media posts, and records of them contacting my employer, documentation of the fake liens they'd filed, copies of their threatening letters demanding I give them my land. It was simply a mountain of evidence meticulously organized and documented. My attorney said it was some of the best record keeping he'd ever seen from a client. The HOA's attorney reached out about a week after we filed our countersuit and suggesting mediation. My attorney told them we would consider if they dropped their suit and paid my legal fees, but they refused to do that. Discovery was an absolute goldmine. We subpoenaed all the HOA records and documents. What we found was even worse than I thought. Turns out the HOA board had been embezzling funds for years, and they'd convinced the residents that they needed to build up a legal defense fund to deal with problem properties like mine, and they'd collected over $200,000 in special assessments from the homeowners. But most of that money had been spent on personal expenses, luxury items, and sweetheart contracts with companies owned by board members' relatives. Even better though, the documents showed that the board had explicitly discussed trying to force me out so they could acquire my property for pennies on the dollar and then sell access rights to the lake as a premium amenity to raise property values. They had literally planned the whole harassment campaign as a strategy to make me give up. We also found emails between board members discussing the fake violations, joking about how they were gonna make this guy's life hell, and coordinating their false reports to authorities. One email from the HOA president actually said, "He's not part of the HOA, but he doesn't know that we cannot actually enforce anything. Keep sending notices and fines. Eventually he'll either pay up or leave." Well, my attorney was practically giddy when he read through all of this. "They've handed us everything we need," he said. "This is going to be a massacre." The case went to trial about 8 months later. The HOA showed up with their attorney and several board members, all dressed professionally and putting on their best concerned citizen faces. I showed up with my attorney and boxes of evidence. Their attorney argued that my property was somehow implicitly part of the HOA because it was near the subdivision and bordered the lake. He claimed that I had caused property values to drop by refusing to maintain my land to community standards. He brought in a real estate agent who testified that properties in the area had seen below average appreciation, though on cross-examination she admitted she had no way to prove that my property had anything to do with it. And yeah guys, I feel like it had more to do with the HOA being so crazy. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that OP was responsible for the drop in property values? And while you're at it, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you haven't already. Anyway, when it was our turn, my attorney systematically destroyed them. He presented the title history showing my property had never been part of the HOA or any previous development. He also showed the original development plans for the HOA, which clearly excluded my parcel. He presented testimony from the county surveyor confirming the property boundaries and the separate legal status of my land. Then he moved on to the countersuit claims. He showed the judge the emails where the HOA board discussed their plan to harass me into leaving. He played video footage from my trail cams showing them trespassing on my property, breaking into my trailer and taking photographs without permission. He presented evidence of every false report they had made to authorities, every threatening letter and every fake lien they had filed. The HOA board members visibly squirmed in their seats as each piece of evidence was presented. Their attorney kept trying to object, but the judge overruled him almost every time, and then came the financial evidence. My attorney presented the HOA's own records showing they had collected over $200,000 from residents for a legal defense fund, but had only spent about $30,000 on actual legal fees related to my case. He showed receipts and bank records proving the board had used HOA funds to pay for vacations, expensive dinners, home renovations and other personal expenses. The judge's expression grew darker as the evidence piled up. At one point, he actually stopped the proceedings and asked the HOA board members directly if they had anything to say. The HOA president tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding and they had acted in good faith to protect the community. The judge did not look convinced though. The trial lasted 3 days, and at the end the judge did not even need much time to deliberate or anything. He ruled that the HOA's lawsuit was completely without merit. My property had never been part of their association and they had no authority over my land and their claims were frivolous. He dismissed their case with prejudice, meaning they could not refile, and then he turned to our countersuit. He ruled in our favor on every single claim: harassment, trespassing, defamation, abuse of process, filing false liens and several others. He awarded me actual damages for my legal fees and time lost dealing with their harassment. He awarded me punitive damages for their willful and malicious conduct, and he ordered them to pay my attorney fees, which by that point were substantial. Altogether, the judgment was for just over $400,000, but that was not even the best part. The judge also made a special finding that the HOA board had breached their fiduciary duty to the HOA members by embezzling funds and using the association to pursue a personal vendetta. He ordered a forensic audit of the HOA's finances and referred the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. Within a week, the local newspaper picked up the story. Local HOA board sued neighbor over property they didn't control, ordered to pay $400K. The article detailed the harassment, the embezzlement, and everything. The HOA president, vice president, and 2 other board members were all forced to resign. The homeowners in the HOA held an emergency meeting and voted to dissolve the entire board. A new board was elected with a mandate to clean house and recover the embezzled funds. The district attorney did file criminal charges against the former board members. I don't know all the details here because I wasn't directly involved, but I heard that 3 of them took plea deals and had to pay restitution. The former president fought the charges but was eventually convicted of embezzlement and fraud, and last I heard, she got a couple years of prison time and a hefty fine. The HOA itself had to file for bankruptcy because they couldn't pay the judgment, and the homeowners had to approve a special assessment just to cover the bankruptcy filing and get out from under the debt. A few of them actually contacted me to apologize for what the board had done, which I appreciated. I told them I had nothing against the regular homeowners, just the board members who had targeted me. As for me, I eventually collected most of the judgment. The HOA's insurance paid a chunk of it, and I was able to get some of the embezzled funds that were recovered. I didn't get the full $400K, but I got enough to cover all my legal fees and then some. And with the money, I was finally able to build my dream cabin on the property. And the next one is another beautifully satisfying story, which is titled "The Elite Got a Taste of Their Own Medicine." Back in 2018, I married my now ex-husband. He came from money and grew up in the upper class. He never lacked anything, but I'm the complete opposite. Grew up extremely poor, learned very early on that you have to work hard and have your own bag. We met at his uncle's restaurant where I was a server. He came in one day to eat and I was his server. He asked for my number and we hit it off. Or so I thought. But after we got married, his true colors were quick to follow. In short, he was a complete narcissist, actually diagnosed. This story takes place when I meet his sister and her BF for the first time. We pick them up from the airport and as he introduces us, she eagerly says, "Oh my god, she's totally Jordan's." Her boyfriend agrees and my husband chuckles. I'm like, what is Jordan's? And my husband tells me that it means I've got great steel. I thank her for the compliment and think nothing of it. Throughout their visit, they start calling me Jordan's and I accept it as a cute nickname. Like, great, they like me. That was until one night we decided to all get drunk. We popped open some wine and as we drank more and more, they started commenting on how crappy and cheap my wine was. I kind of shook it off as they decided to play stupid drinking games, Truth or Dare was one of them, and my husband's sister dared him to tell me what Jordan's was. They are all laughing like chickens and totally drunk, and he says, "Jordan's is the name we give homeless people who have swag." By this point, I'm completely dumbfounded as they all burst out into more laughter. I was not as drunk as everyone else and just sat there trying not to cry. Fast forward to the next day, I asked my hungover husband what the F was their problem. He had completely removed that fact that he had told me, and he started saying, "It's just a joke, don't take it seriously." I didn't let it go though and kept pressing the matter. He finally told me, "I may have told them about your upbringing and how you are not like us, just to prepare them." I was in complete shock. To prepare them for me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I spent the next few days to myself, making excuses, staying busy. My husband had bought an expensive bottle of tequila that we were supposed to drink the night before they left. The day before the last, though, they went on a hike, which I excused myself from. Time for a little payback, guys. Let's test your elite palates. So I videotaped myself swapping out the expensive bottle of tequila for Saucer Gold. In the video, I sit back and enjoy shots of tequila, talking about my upbringing, the love and closeness I share with my family, and how fortunate I was to have grown up not becoming a disgusting POS snob like the family I married into. I mean, I went off. I got drunk and went to bed by the time they got back, so I didn't have to engage and they didn't know that I was drunk off $200 worth of tequila. The last night I watched these idiots sip the tequila like wine and comment on how distinguished and delicate it was. They mentioned you could taste the quality. I'm sitting there enjoying every word that came out of their mouths. I then get up, connect my phone to the TV and say, "I put something together for you guys to say thank you for your visit." I hit play and watch as they started to understand what just happened and what they were drinking. Satisfied, I start gathering shot glasses off the table while the echo of total silence hit the walls. They said nothing to me. I went to the bed only to have my husband wake me up in outrage, telling me his sister was crying because I humiliated them, and I just say, "Yeah, sucks, doesn't it?" They left the next day and never spoke to me again. Even when we visited their parents, they all live in Europe, she refused to come see us. Safe to say, I'm happily divorced. And the next one is a petty revenge story, and it is titled "Worked Out Even Nicer Than I Thought." So I live 100 meters from a school. And usually I'm totally fine with that, no problems whatsoever. What drives me up the wall though is when school is out. Grandparents or normal parents sometimes park in front of my driveway. So I come home from work and there's someone parked, still sitting in the car, in front of the driveway. Now I am tired, had a bad day, and kind of done with all this BS, so I signal the guy to please move. He gives me the standard, "It's just 5 minutes to pick up the kids" routine, so I cut off my engine, blocking the entire street. People start honking until the traffic cop who regulates the traffic and start and end of school comes over. He asks why I'm stopped and I answer, "Oh, it's not a big deal. This guy's just parked in front of my driveway for 5 minutes to pick up his kids." Cop goes over to the other guy and ends up giving him a ticket. I would have been happy with him just moving, but this turned out way better. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and I will see you again tomorrow.